The Galactic Council chamber had stood for 10,000 cycles. Its walls were made of black stone that absorbed light, and its ceiling rose so high that smaller species could not see it. Hundreds of seats climbed upward in circular tiers, each one filled with beings from across the stars. The hegemony sat in the highest tier, their hard shells gleaming under the pale lights. Below them, the crystalline accord floated in tanks of pressurized gas, their bodies catching and bending the light into rainbows. The Thousand-Star Confederacy occupied the middle sections, their many forms showing the diversity of their member worlds. At the very bottom of the chamber, in a seat that was smaller and simpler than all the others, sat a single human. Ambassador was 53 years old. She had hair that she kept short and lines around her eyes from years of difficult negotiations. She wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, with no medals or decorations. She had been the human representative to the Council for 3 years, and in all that time, she had never once been allowed to speak during a formal session. Humans were observers. Observers watched. They did not participate. Had learned to accept this. She had learned to sit quietly while the great powers of the galaxy made decisions that shaped the lives of trillions. She had learned to take notes and send reports back to Earth, knowing that her government could do nothing with the information. Humanity was young. Humanity was weak. Humanity had to wait. Today, she could not wait any longer. The session had begun like any other. The Arbiter, an ancient whose shell had faded from bright green to dusty, opened the proceedings with the traditional words. Representatives made their statements. Votes were held. Business moved forward with the slow, grinding efficiency that had characterized the Council for. Then the matter of the Terminus Reach came to the floor. Sat forward in her seat. She had been dreading this moment for months, ever since the first reports had reached Earth. The Terminus Reach was a small cluster of worlds at the edge of explored space, home to a species called the. They were silicon-based farmers who had never developed space travel. Their civilization was old but peaceful, focused on growing crystal gardens and composing songs that could last for centuries. The hegemony wanted their worlds. The Thousand-Star Confederacy also wanted their worlds. For the past year, the two powers had been arguing about who would get them. No one had asked what they wanted. No one had even invited them to the discussion. The Arbiter raised one of his many arms for silence. The chamber fell quiet. His voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of centuries of authority. The matter of the Terminus Reach has been deliberated for sufficient time, he said. The Council has reached a decision. The 5 worlds of the Terminus Reach will be divided equally between the hegemony and the Thousand-Star Confederacy. The native population will be relocated to designated areas where they can continue their cultural practices without interfering with development operations. Felt something cold settle in her stomach. Relocated. It was such a clean word, such a simple word. It hid so much ugliness. She had seen the intelligence reports. She knew what relocation meant when the hegemony was involved. They would be moved to mining colonies. They would work until they died. Their crystal gardens would be destroyed. Their songs would be forgotten. In a few generations, they would exist only in historical databases, another extinct species in a galaxy full of graves. Raised her hand. The Arbiter did not look at her. None of the representatives looked at her. She was an observer. Observers did not raise their hands. She stood up. The movement caught attention. A few heads turned. A few eyes focused on the small human in the lowest seat. The Arbiter's many eyes finally settled on her, and his mandibles clicked with what might have been annoyance. The observer from Earth will remain seated, he said. Observers do not participate in council proceedings. Remain standing. I request permission to address the council. I request permission again. The clicks of the Arbiter's mandibles grew louder. The observer will sit down or be removed from the chamber. Did not sit. I request permission a third time, as is my right under Section 7 of the Observer Protocols." Silence fell over the chamber. Section 7 was ancient law, almost forgotten. It stated that any observer could request to speak 3 times, and on the third request, the arbiter was required to grant them a minimum of 30 seconds. It was a ceremonial provision, meant to show that the council valued all voices. No one had ever actually used it. The arbiter's shell seemed to darken with anger. "Very well," he said. "The observer from Earth may address the council. You have 30 seconds. Walk to the central speaking platform." It was a long walk from her seat, and she felt every eye in the chamber following her. She climbed the steps to the platform and stood where 10,000 speakers had stood before her. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. She spoke clearly, making sure her words would be heard and recorded. "Humanity formally invokes the Charter of Sentient Advocacy. We claim protective jurisdiction over the terminus reach and all species living within it. We will defend this claim with all necessary force." For a moment, nothing happened. The words hung in the air, translated into hundreds of languages by the chamber's systems. Then the chamber exploded with sound. Representatives shouted. Some laughed. The delegation rose from their seats, their shells rattling with outrage. The crystalline accord flashed with colors that indicated extreme surprise. Even the usually calm Confederacy representatives were talking among themselves with obvious confusion. The arbiter slammed his arm against the speaking platform, a gesture that demanded silence. Slowly, reluctantly, the chamber quieted. "The human observer seems to be confused," the arbiter said. His voice was cold. "The Charter of Sentient Advocacy is an ancient provision that has never been invoked. It allows a council member to extend military protection to pre-spacefaring species. Humanity is not a council member. Humanity is an observer. Humanity has no fleet, no resources, and no authority. This claim is meaningless." Smiled, it was not a friendly smile. "I appreciate the clarification," she said. "Let me provide some clarifications of my own." She pulled a small data crystal from her pocket and placed it on the speaking platform. The chamber's systems immediately began reading its contents. "First," continued, "the Charter of Sentient Advocacy does not limit itself to council members. It says any species that has achieved interstellar travel may invoke it. Humanity has achieved interstellar travel. The Charter is valid." The arbiter's eyes narrowed. "Legal technicalities will not change the reality of." "Second," said, cutting him off, "as I speak, 312 human warships are entering the terminus reach. They are taking up defensive positions around all 5 worlds. They have orders to protect those worlds against any aggression from any source." The chamber erupted again. 300 ships was not a large fleet by galactic standards, but it was far more than anyone had believed humanity possessed. Where had they come from? How had they traveled so far without being detected? The arbiter was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was careful. "You are an observer. You have no authority to commit your species to military action." "I have full authority from the United Earth government," said. "This action was planned and approved by our parliament. We have been preparing for this moment for the past 5 years." "This is madness," one of the representatives shouted. "You are declaring war on the hegemony." "No," said. "We are declaring protection for the. If you choose to attack them anyway, that is your decision. We will respond accordingly." "You will be destroyed," the arbiter said. "The hegemony alone has thousands of ships. Your entire species could be wiped from existence." Nodded. "That is possible. We have discussed it. We have accepted the risk." "Why?" The question came from a Confederate representative, a tall being with skin like flowing water. "Why would you risk everything for a species you have never met? What do you gain?" Turned to face the full chamber. She looked at the hundreds of representatives, beings from worlds she had never visited, species she would never fully understand. She thought about Earth, so far away. She thought about the who had no idea that their fate was being decided by strangers. They have done nothing wrong, she said. They are peaceful. They want only to tend their gardens and sing their songs. They did not ask to be conquered. They did not ask to be relocated. They did not ask for anything except to be left alone. She paused, letting her words settle. On Earth we have a saying, the measure of a civilization is how it treats its most vulnerable members. We believe that saying should apply to the galaxy as well. They are vulnerable. They cannot defend themselves. They cannot speak for themselves, so we will defend them. We will speak for them, because someone should. The arbiter made a sound that might have been discussed. Pretty words. They will not save you when hegemony warships arrive. Perhaps not, agreed, but that brings me to my third point. She gestured at the data crystal. That crystal contains evidence that the hegemony has been capturing pre-spacefaring populations and using them as forced labor for the past 600 cycles. Mining colonies, factory worlds, construction projects, millions of beings taken from their homes and worked until they died, their civilizations erased from history. The chamber went absolutely silent. This evidence is being transmitted to every independent news network in the galaxy as we speak, continued. By the time this session ends, every citizen of every world will know what the hegemony has done. They will know, and they will have to decide what they think about it. The delegation was frozen in their seats. The arbiter's shell had gone pale. So said, "You can destroy us. You probably will, but you will not do it quietly. The galaxy will be watching, and they will remember." She stepped down from the platform and began the long walk back to her seat. The chamber remained silent. No one moved. No one spoke. For the first time in 10,000 cycles, the Galactic Council had nothing to say. Sat down in her observer's seat. Her hands were shaking now, hidden beneath the edge of her desk. She had done what she came to do. The rest was out of her control. She thought about tending their crystal gardens under alien skies. She hoped they would have the chance to sing their songs for a long time to come. Whatever happened next, at least humanity had tried. At least someone had spoken. 3 months passed after the council session, and the galaxy watched with growing tension. News networks on hundreds of worlds broadcast constant updates. Analysts offered predictions. Governments issued statements. Everyone had an opinion about what humanity had done. Most of those opinions were not kind. The evidence against the hegemony had caused outrage at first. There were protests on dozens of worlds. Politicians demanded investigations. For a few weeks, it seemed like the galaxy might actually hold the hegemony accountable for its crimes. Then the hegemony released its own statements. The labor programs were legal under hegemony law. The relocated populations had been given opportunities for productive work. Any deaths were unfortunate accidents. The evidence had been exaggerated by human propagandists trying to distract from their own illegal actions. The outrage faded. The protests stopped. One by one, the governments that had demanded justice fell silent. Trade agreements were too valuable. Military alliances were too important. The hegemony was too powerful to challenge over something that had happened to species no one had ever heard of. Humanity stood alone. Ambassador had relocated from the council chamber to a converted cargo ship called the Defiance. It was not a warship, but it had been modified with communication equipment and a small medical bay. It served as the command center for humanity's defense of the Terminus Reach, floating in orbit around the largest world. From her window, could see the planet below. Its surface was covered with crystal formations that caught the light of the local sun and scattered it into millions of colors. They had spent thousands of years cultivating those crystals, shaping them into gardens that told the story of their civilization. They were beautiful in a way that made her heart ache. She turned away from the window when her communications officer entered the room. "Report," she said. Lieutenant James was young, barely 30, with the tired eyes of someone who had not slept properly in weeks. "The hegemony fleet has finished assembling at the border," he said. "Final count is 817 capital ships, with support vessels numbering in the thousands." Nodded, they had expected this. 800 ships. Humanity had 312, and many of those were old designs that had been pulled out of storage. The math was not complicated. "Any communication from the Hegemony Command?" "Yes, ma'am. They've issued an ultimatum. We have one standard cycle to withdraw all forces from the Terminus Reach. If we refuse, they will consider it an act of war and respond accordingly." "One cycle," almost laughed. "That's generous of them." Ma'am looked uncertain. "What are we going to do?" Sat down at her desk. She had thought about this moment for months, running scenarios, consulting with military advisors, talking with Earth's government. She had known from the beginning that it would probably end this way. 300 ships against 800. A species that had been traveling among the stars for 2 centuries against an empire that had ruled for. "Open a channel," she said. "All frequencies. I want the entire galaxy to hear this." Hesitated for only a moment, then moved to the communication console. "Channel open, ma'am. Broadcasting on all standard frequencies." Looked at the camera that would carry her image across the stars. She thought about the below, who still did not fully understand what was happening in orbit above their world. She thought about Earth, so far away that her message would take hours to reach it. She thought about her children, grown now, who had supported her decision even knowing it might cost them their mother. "This is Ambassador, speaking on behalf of the United Earth Government and the Human Defense Force in the Terminus Reach." She paused, steadying her voice. "We have received the Hegemony's ultimatum. Our response is simple. No, we will not withdraw. We will not abandon the. We will not leave innocent people to be taken from their homes and worked to death in mining colonies." She leaned forward, her eyes hard. "We know the odds. We know we are outnumbered. We know that many of us will die in the coming days. But we also know that some things are worth dying for. We believe that protecting the helpless is one of those things. We believe that standing against cruelty is one of those things. We believe that being human means more than just surviving." She took a breath. "To the Hegemony, if you want the Terminus Reach, come and take it. We will meet you. We will fight you. And whatever happens, we will make you remember that you faced us." She ended the transmission. The room was silent. "Ma'am," said quietly, "the fleet is requesting orders." Stood up. "Tell them to prepare for battle, and tell them," she paused, searching for the right words, "tell them that I am proud to serve with every single one of them. Whatever happens next, we did the right thing." The Hegemony fleet crossed the border 3 hours later. The Battle of Terminus Reach began at dawn, as measured by the largest world. The Hegemony ships came in perfect formation, hundreds of vessels arranged in geometric patterns that had not changed in thousands of years. Their strategy was simple and effective: overwhelm the enemy with superior numbers, destroy their ships, claim victory. It had worked against every opponent they had ever faced. The human ships did not form lines. They did not create patterns. They scattered like seeds in the wind, spreading across the battlefield in what seemed like complete chaos. Hegemony commanders looked at their tactical displays and saw no logic, no order, no strategy they recognized. That was their first mistake. Human ships were smaller than Hegemony vessels, but they were faster and more agile. They darted between the enemy formations, striking at weak points and then vanishing before the larger ships could respond. They attacked in groups of 3 or 4, coordinating their fire on single targets before breaking apart and reforming elsewhere. They never stayed still. They never gave the Hegemony a clear target. The first day of battle cost the Hegemony 53 ships. Humanity lost 28. The numbers were still against the humans, but the Hegemony commanders were unsettled. This was not how war was supposed to work. The enemy was supposed to face them in honest combat, fleet against fleet. Instead, the humans fought like wild animals, unpredictable and vicious. On the second day, human ships began targeting supply vessels. The hegemony had thousands of support ships carrying fuel, ammunition, and replacement parts. They were lightly defended because no enemy had ever bothered to attack them before. Why would they? Destroying support ships did not win battles. But without fuel, warships could not move. Without ammunition, they could not fire. Without replacement parts, damaged systems stayed damaged. The hegemony commanders suddenly found themselves managing logistics instead of fighting, pulling warships away from the front lines to protect their supply chains. The humans attacked the gaps they left behind. On the fourth day, something happened that shocked the entire galaxy. A human destroyer named the Thermopylae found itself trapped between 17 hegemony cruisers. The ship was damaged, its engines failing, its weapons running low on power. By all logic, it should have surrendered. By all logic, its crew should have tried to survive. Captain Sarah ordered her crew to evacuate in escape pods. Then she turned her ship toward the enemy and opened a communication channel. "This is the Thermopylae," she said. Her voice was calm, almost peaceful. "We're going to hold this position. Behind us, there are 3 transports carrying civilians to safety. We will give them time to escape." She held the channel open as her ship fought. For 11 hours, the Thermopylae faced the 17 cruisers alone. Captain talked the entire time, not about tactics or battle reports, but about Earth. She described the mountains where she had grown up, the rivers she had swum in as a child, the poems she had loved as a student. She recited those poems as her ship burned. She spoke them clearly, calmly, as if she were sitting in a garden on a peaceful afternoon. The hegemony translators could not process the words properly. Their computers flagged them as potential coded messages, but analysis found nothing. Just words. Just human words. The Thermopylae was destroyed after 11 hours. The 3 transports escaped safely. 53 civilians reached safety because one woman and her ship bought them time. News of the Thermopylae spread across the galaxy. Networks that had stopped covering the battle suddenly paid attention again. People who had dismissed humanity's stand as foolish and pointless watched the recordings and felt something they could not name. On the 6th day, something changed. A cargo ship jumped into the Terminus Reach system. It was not a warship. It was not part of the defense fleet. It was a private vessel owned by a family from Earth's moon colonies, and it had traveled for 2 weeks to reach the battle. More ships followed, freighters, mining vessels, personal yachts, research ships, anything with an engine and a hull. Thousands of humans crossed the galaxy to stand in the Terminus Reach, not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to. They were not soldiers. Most of them had never fired a weapon, but they came anyway. They carried supplies for the warships, evacuated wounded crew members, rescued pilots from destroyed vessels. Some of them modified their ships with improvised weapons and joined the fight directly. A mining ship called the Fortunate Son destroyed 2 hegemony cruisers by ramming them. Its captain, an old woman named Wu who had spent 40 years drilling asteroids, sent one final message before impact. "I've lived a good life. Let me end it meaning something." On the 9th day, the hegemony fleet. They had lost nearly 300 ships. Humanity had lost 170. The numbers still favored the hegemony. They could have continued the fight. They could have won through sheer attrition. But their commanders looked at the human ships still fighting, still refusing to break, and they saw something they had never seen before. An enemy that would not stop. An enemy that seemed to treat death as a price worth paying. An enemy that violated every rule of civilized warfare and somehow made that violation feel righteous. The hegemony had fought 100 wars. They had won them all. They knew how to defeat enemies who wanted to survive. They did not know how to defeat enemies who wanted to matter. The withdrawal was not called a retreat. The official statement called it a strategic repositioning. But everyone who watched the hegemony ships pull back from the terminus reach knew the truth. Humanity had won. Not through strength, not through numbers, not through any advantage that could be measured by computers or predicted by analysts. They had won because they refused to lose. They had won because they cared more about standing for something than surviving for nothing. And the galaxy, watching from worlds beyond counting, would never look at the small blue planet called Earth the same way again. 6 months after the Battle of Terminus Reach, the Galactic Council convened for a special session. The Black Stone Chamber was more crowded than it had been in living memory. Representatives from species that had not attended in centuries had returned to witness what everyone knew would be a historic moment. The observation galleries, usually empty, were packed with journalists and diplomats. The entire galaxy seemed to be holding its breath. Ambassador entered through the main doors. It was a small thing, but everyone noticed. Observers entered through a side passage, a smaller door that led directly to the observer seating. Members entered through the main doors, walking the long central aisle under the eyes of the entire assembly. Walked that aisle now, her step steady, her gaze forward. She did not stop at the observer section. She walked past it, continuing to the central speaking platform at the heart of the chamber. The same platform where she had stood 6 months before, invoking the charter of sentient advocacy. The same platform where she had challenged the power that had ruled the galaxy for. She climbed the steps and turned to face the assembly. The new arbiter, unnamed, watched her from his raised seat. He was younger than his predecessor, his shell still bright green, but his eyes held the same calculating intelligence that had characterized his species for thousands of years. The old arbiter had resigned in disgrace after the labor documents were confirmed, had been chosen to repair the damage to the hegemony's reputation. The representative from Earth will explain her presence at the speaking platform, said. His voice was calm, controlled, revealing nothing. Met his gaze without flinching. I am here to request formal membership in the Galactic Council, full voting rights, immediate effect. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. This was expected, of course. Everyone knew why humanity had called for this special session, but hearing the words spoken aloud in this chamber still carried weight. Mandibles clicked slowly. The request is irregular. Observer species must complete a minimum of 50 cycles before applying for membership. Humanity has been an observer for only 5 cycles. The rules are clear. The rules are outdated, replied. They were written for a different galaxy, a galaxy where observer species watched and learned and waited for their turn. Humanity has done more than watch. Humanity has engaged in unauthorized military action. Humanity has interfered in the affairs of council members. Humanity has destabilized a region of space that had been at peace for centuries. Leaned forward slightly. These are not qualifications for membership. These are crimes. The terminus reach was not at peace, said. It was being prepared for conquest. They were not secure. They were marked for extinction. We did not destabilize anything. We refused to accept the stable suffering of innocent people. The Council's decision. The Council's decision was wrong. The words hung in the air. In 10,000 cycles, no species had ever spoken them so plainly in this chamber. Decisions could be debated, amended, revised through proper channels. But to simply declare them wrong, to claim that the highest authority in the galaxy had failed in its basic duty, that was something new. Studied her for a long moment. You are very confident for a species that barely survived its first real battle. We're confident because we know what we stand for. Turned to face the full assembly, raising her voice so that every representative could hear. 6 months ago, I stood in this chamber and invoked an ancient law. I did it because I believed that law still meant something, even if everyone had forgotten it. I believed that the galaxy should protect those who cannot protect themselves. She paused, letting her gaze move across the tiers of representatives. A lot has happened since then. We fought a battle that everyone said we would lose. We lost ships. We lost people. We lost friends. Her voice caught slightly, but she continued. Captain Sarah of the Thermopylae held for 11 hours against 17 enemy ships. She recited poetry as she died. Lieutenant Commander of the Indomitable evacuated his crew and then turned his ship into a weapon to destroy an enemy carrier. Wu, a 73-year-old mining captain, flew her freighter into the heart of an enemy formation because she wanted her death to matter. His hands tightened on the edges of the speaking platform. These people died for an idea. They died believing that protecting strangers was worth more than protecting themselves. They died believing that the strong should shield the weak, not exploit them. They died believing in a galaxy that could be better than it is. She looked directly at. That is what humanity brings to this council. Not just ships and soldiers, not just resources and trade. We bring a belief that this council can be what it was created to be. We bring a willingness to fight for that belief. We bring the courage to call things wrong when they are wrong, even when it costs us. The chamber was absolutely silent. You can reject our membership, continued. You can vote us out and tell us to wait another 50 cycles, but that won't change anything. We will still be out there. We will still protect those who need protecting. We will still speak for those who have no voice. We will still hold the line, even if we have to hold it alone. She took a breath. Or you can accept us. You can let us join you, and we can work together to make the charter of sentient advocacy mean something. We can establish real protections for pre-spacefaring species. We can investigate what happened to all those populations that disappeared into hegemony labor camps. We can build a galaxy where power comes with responsibility. Stepped back from the platform. The choice is yours, but I want you to understand something. Whatever you decide today, humanity will remember. Will remember. The galaxy will remember. And 10,000 years from now, when historians look back at this moment, they will judge us by what we chose. She fell silent. The chamber remained still. Then slowly, a single representative rose from the middle tiers. It was a Confederate delegate, a tall being with skin like flowing water and eyes that reflected light in strange patterns. Recognized her. She had been the one who asked why humanity would risk everything for strangers, back in that first session. I wish to speak, the delegate said. Gestured permission. My name is Flowing Stream in Morning Light, the delegate said. I represent a world that joined the Confederacy 3,000 cycles ago. Before that, we were independent. Before that, we were primitive. Before that, she paused. Before that, we were prey. The chamber stirred. This was unexpected. My species was almost destroyed by raiders from a neighboring system. They wanted our world. They did not want us. We had no technology, no weapons, no ships. We had only ourselves, and we were dying. Flowing Stream in Morning Light's voice was steady, but there was old pain beneath the words. Then strangers came, beings from distant stars who had no reason to help us. They protected us. They taught us. They gave us the chance to become what we are today. She turned to face. I have often wondered what happened to those strangers. Their species disappeared from history long ago. We do not know why, but I know this. They believed that the strong should protect the weak. They believed that civilization meant caring for others. They believed exactly what humanity seems to believe. Flowing Stream in Morning Light looked around the chamber. Perhaps it is time we remembered those beliefs ourselves. She sat down. For a moment nothing happened. Then another representative rose, and another, and another. One by one, delegates from dozens of worlds stood to speak in favor of humanity's membership. Some told stories like Flowing Stream in Morning Lights, tales of long-ago help from forgotten benefactors. Others spoke about the Battle of Terminus Reach, about the recordings they had watched, about the way humanity had fought. The Crystalline Accord, who had not officially spoken in the Council for 100 cycles, broke their silence to declare support. The minor powers who had always deferred to the hegemony found their voices. Even some delegates spoke carefully in favor, suggesting that the council needed new perspectives, new energy. The vote was called 3 hours later, announced the results in a voice that betrayed nothing. The motion to grant full membership to humanity has passed. The vote was unanimous. Stood very still. She had prepared herself for rejection. She had prepared speeches for a negative outcome, plans for what humanity would do alone. She had not quite allowed herself to believe that this could happen. Continued. Furthermore, the Council has approved the formation of a special committee to reform the Charter of Sentient Advocacy into a binding legal framework. Ambassador has been nominated to lead this committee. Founder voice, I accept. Additionally, said, and something in his tone shifted slightly, the Council has approved an investigation into the labor practices of the hegemony. All evidence will be reviewed. All responsible parties will be identified. Justice will be pursued. The hegemony delegation sat in frozen silence. They had come to this session expecting to see humanity humiliated, put in its place, reminded that young species did not challenge ancient powers. Instead, they watched their empire's crimes exposed, their influence diminished, their future questioned. Walked down from the speaking platform. This time, she did not return to the observer section. She walked to the membership tiers where a new seat had been prepared. It was small, simple, located in one of the lower sections among the newer species. She sat down in it anyway. A human seat in the Galactic Council, earned not through patience and waiting, but through courage and conviction. Earned because humanity had dared to be what the galaxy had forgotten it could be. The session ended. Representatives filed out, already talking among themselves about what had happened, what it meant, what would come next. Remained in her seat for a while, looking around the ancient chamber. She thought about Sarah, reciting poetry as her ship burned. She thought about and Wu and all the others who had died believing their deaths would matter. She thought about the, still tending their crystal gardens on their beautiful worlds, free now to continue their songs for generations to come. She thought about Earth, so far away, where people would soon learn that their species had taken its place among the stars. Humanity had not won because they were the strongest, or the most advanced. They had won because they had remembered something that the galaxy had forgotten. Civilization was not about power. It was not about treaties or trade or military might. It was about how you treated those who had no power at all. It was about the choices you made when no one could force you to make them. Humanity had chosen to stand. They had chosen to fight. They had chosen to care about strangers they had never met, simply because those strangers needed someone to care. And in doing so, they had reminded the galaxy what it meant to be civilized. Stood up from her new seat and walked out of the council chamber. There was work to be done. Committees to form, investigations to launch, protections to establish. The hard part in many ways was just beginning. But for the first time in a very long time, she believed that the galaxy could be better. Not because she was optimistic or naive, but because she had seen what could happen when people refused to accept that things had to stay the same. She had seen humanity roar, and the council fall silent. And she had seen the galaxy listen.